Hi. So today we are going to finally write our narrative text, our story. We're going to use those modal verbs that we looked at this week. We're going to use descriptive language and we're going to use figurative language. But before we do that, we need to hear the end of the story. So let's listen to the final part of Beowulf. Not long afterwards, those 10 treacherous battle shirkers, those cringing cowards who had deserted their leader so shamefully, decided it was safe enough to emerge from the woods. They came now to where the old king lay, and found Beowulf, weary with battle, weeping at his lord's shoulder, still trying to wake him with water, still not wanting to believe the hero would not wake from his death sleep, would never speak again. But as stillness gripped the old man's body, he saw and understood there was no life left, nor any hope of life either. He turned his gaze then, and his anger, on those craven companions in arms gathered around. Well, look upon this lord of men, who made you who you are, gave you all you have and hold, but all his kindness to you were wasted, were they not? For when he needed you, you turned and ran away. He had to face the fire fury of this death dragon alone and unaided. I could do little for him on my own, though I tried my best. All the world shall now hear of how you deserted your lord and kinsman, turned tail and fled, with never a thought for your king in his hour of greatest needs. You thought only of your own worthless skins. For this shameful act you will pay a heavy price, I promise you. You will be stripped of all riches and honours, all possessions, even your homes. You and yours will be condemned to wander the world as beasts, homeless and friendless forever. News of the great king's death spread fast, how he had tried all he could to kill the death dragon, and had indeed achieved it at last, but at a terrible cost. Both lay dead now on their slaughter bed by the mound. Beowulf, the young spearman, the only one who had stood by him in the fight, still at his master's side. On hearing these hateful tidings, the earls in the royal mead hall, saddened and silent, sat by their shields, fearful now for the safety of their kingdom, for the lord of the Geats, so long their strong protector, so long their guardian against every enemy, was gone from them now forever. Still unwilling and unable to believe this dread news, the war band went heavy-hearted and with welling tears to where Beowulf lay. And so they saw the body for themselves, and they knew then that the final day had come for their champion, that the warrior king of the Geats was indeed dead. They saw too that loathsome dragon stretched out nearby, scorched by his own flames, twisted and coiled in his death agony. Over 50 foot long he was, this vile creature, once master of darkness, once their terrible tormentor, now laid low and destroyed by brave Beowulf. And they found there too all the treasure hoard the death dragon had been guarding. At Beowulf's command, they fetched all of it out from inside the mound, bowls and flagons and platters, all in gold, wonderfully worked weapons too, armourings and jewels, hidden for 1,000 years from human eye until this moment. Neither they, as they gazed in awe at this precious pile, nor indeed Beowulf himself, could ever have known that the sole survivor of the earls who so long had placed the treasure for safekeeping there had laid a curse on it to last to the end of time. That whoever found it and plundered it would bring down upon himself and his people nothing but terror and tragedy. And so it had happened. Beowulf lifted his head and spoke to these grief-stricken earls. Before he died, our dear king asked me to present to you his last orders. We are to raise on the place of the funeral pyre, high on the hill at Ronanes, a barrow so that his name should not be forgotten. It shall be known always as Beowulf's barrow, and I say it must be the most magnificent, the most imposing barrow ever built, a place fitting for his most honoured and honourable of all warrior walkings that ever lived. But let us dispose of the remains of this fiend of hell, this death dragon who has brought so much suffering. The very sight of him offends me and sickens my heart." So they pushed the death dragon over the edge of the cliff, and watched as his body fell on the rocks below and broke him there. The sea took him and covered him. Then the earls made a bier, and carried their beloved king to the hill at Hronesness. Firewood was brought from far and wide to build the funeral pyre. All around it they hung shining war coats, battle shields and helmets, as befitting the great hero they had lost. On the very top they laid him, just as he had ordered. Beowulf it was who set the torch to the pyre, kindled the biggest funeral pyre ever seen. Wind fanned, the flames roared up through the pyre and consumed their cherished lord. As the cloud of black smoke drifted high over the ocean, there could be heard the wailing and weeping of the women, the warriors and all his people, a song of sorrow that rose with the billowing smoke. Heaven swallowed both. Then, just as Beowulf had commanded, the Geats built for their dead leader a beacon on that headland, so high and huge that all seafarers could see it for miles around. Deep in his tomb they laid the ashes that remained from the fire, and placed there too all the jewels and torques, all that magnificent treasure hoard they had recovered from the dragon's mound. They left it there, in the earth's keeping, and there it is to this day, no more use to men than ever it was before. Then the warriors rode round and round this walled barrow, last resting place of their hero king, and mourned him, told out loud their grief in lavish words, praising his name and his prowess, honouring him as their lord and friend. Of all the kings that ever lived, they said, this was the gentlest and kindest to his people, the most gracious and famous the world had known. His life may be over, they said, but his name and his deeds would live on as long as this tale was told, which is why, all these years later, I have told this tale. Okay, have a look at your plans. And by your plans, I mean everything we've done this week. Think about what your setting is going to be like. What will you see on your journey? If you don't describe the journey to the reader, then the reader will not know what's there. You might think you're walking through a forest. The reader might think you're walking through a desert. If you've not described it, they won't know. Who is going to go with Beowulf? What do they look like? What will they do? So he's not going to go on his own. He's going to have some companions. Who are they? Do they have names? Are they going to help him? Are they going to run away? Are they going to get killed? Are they going to kind of just do nothing? Think about what his companions are going to do, because he's not going to travel alone. Okay, I'm going to read you my example. I've written it as far as where Beowulf kills the monster. I've not written the ending, because I want you to do your ending completely independently. But if while I'm reading this there's anything that you want to magpie, then please do make a note. If there's any descriptive language, any other ideas you want to include in yours, that's fine. Don't just write the same story as me, because that's boring. But you can steal bits of this to use in yours, that's absolutely fine. Okay, here we go. The very next morning, Beowulf and his warriors were getting ready to leave, when a messenger rode into the village waving frantically. "Wait!" he cried. "A new threat has been sighted. A terrible beast in the swamp of Glumf." Listening carefully to the message, Beowulf knew he had a choice to make. Should he return to the land of the Geats, or should he stay and fight another beast? It might be dangerous, and he could lose his life, but he felt that he had no choice. "I will fight this malicious monster," proclaimed Beowulf. Before long, Beowulf had readied his warband, and they set off. At his side were Eric and Hrothgar, his most trusted allies. Firstly, they had to decide which route they might take. They realised the north road would be quickest, and set off. As they trudged along the road, they saw, To the west, the desolate wasteland. Strange sounds, like the screech of a wounded eagle, came drifting across through the cold wintry air. In the distance they could see the ruined castle of the lost king, sticking up like broken teeth. Darkness fell across that forsaken land, as brave Beowulf and his courageous companions camped for the night. Around the flames of the fire, Beowulf and his companions told staggering stories and tall tales. The memories of those happier times brought comfort to them in the cold night. The next morning, as a watery sun rose above the murky mists, the party packed their things and continued along the perilous path. What fierce fury and fiendish foul fight awaited them? Would they defeat this deadly demon or die in the depths of doom? It was too late now for these questions. Only the terrible task remained. Hour after hour they trudged through mud as thick as treacle, their cloaks soaked and the damp drizzle dripping down their necks. As morning became afternoon, they came upon an insipid inn. The Drop of Dew was its name, and the droopy moustache of the anaemic innkeeper covered a mouth of blackened teeth. The companions dined on stale bread and weak ale, little help on their tiring journey. Continuing their horrible hike, the air grew more squalid and damp. The rotten stench of the steaming swamp drifted on the air. In the distance, a shape moved in the mist. It moved with the shifting fog and seemed both solid and vapour. Beowulf began to distrust his eyes. He asked his companions, but they too were confused. Shadows surrounded the heroic Geats, and a chill penetrated to their very bones. The three men scanned left and right, searching for their elusive quarry. Suddenly, something burst out from the fog. It was clear now. The terrifying terror stood as tall as two men. On its horrific head were three sharp spiky spines, three thin needle-like horns. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, and his legs like piles of rock. Foul slime dripped from his gaping jaws as he let out a blood-curdling roar. As quick as a flash, Beowulf grabbed his shining sword in one hand and his axe in the other. He leapt towards the gruesome giant, and before the beast could react, he had leapt from its knobbly knee to its tremendous shoulder, and finally up on top of its head. With all his might, he brought down axe and sword on the malicious monster's head. In pain, the beast cried a dreadful moan, but it did not fall. Deeper and deeper Beowulf drove his wondrous weapons, and louder the roar of the beast. Calling for his companions, Beowulf summoned up all of his strength. His fearsome friends lunged at the legs of the foul fiend. Finally the creature fell, dead. So, remember to use your monster descriptions from Monday, your modal verb sentences from Tuesday, and your plans from yesterday. Write me an amazing story, which will be an extra chapter to Beowulf. I look forward to reading them. Bye.